Welcome to Nonsense Season 3, Episode 25, our big story and our second show of the week. I'm Jeff Parker.
I'm Stu Little.
This time we're looking at budget cuts and broken dreams, the unseen cost of public school decline. Up next.
Oh, I thought this was the pets.com story.
We'll do that next.
Okay.
Are you a product, like me, of public schools?
Yeah, well, both. But yes, most of my education, my K through 12 education came from public schools, the most of it.
Explain that to me. Was schooling for you like a buffet? You could just pick and choose. I want public this time. I want private this time.
Yes, it was like just like Hometown Buffet, which probably helps explain why I have such issues with authority and task completion and also crab legs. But who's keeping score? Technically, here's the truth. Technically, I graduated high school in the Sacramento airport.
That's where they held your graduation?
No, that's where I flew up to take the California high school equivalency exam because I dropped out of high school.
Why did they give the test at the airport?
They don't. This is what's so fascinating. This was back in the days of the dinosaurs and the fax machines. I had to graduate high school because I was trying to emancipate myself, and you couldn't get emancipated if you didn't graduate high school.
Sure.
You can't take a GED unless you're 18. No point being emancipated if you're over 18.
Okay.
Yada, yada, yada. No internet. Didn't exist really at the time. Certainly no World Wide Web. Had to call around and find the guy that gives the test, the California high school equivalency exam in the state of California. Found him in Sacramento, called him. He's like, oh yeah, we give the test. No problem. It's a couple $100. You just show up. You can take it. The problem is they give it in I don't remember. It was like April and August. And it was currently May. And I needed it now.
Wow.
And he was like, well, I guess you could fly up to my office and I could proctor an exam, free blah, 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 blah. And I said, great, let's do that. I'm in. Booked a flight, flew up on Southwest the next day. The guy who ran this small company picked me up from the airport. When I landed, he got there and he said, look, you seem like you're a smart kid. It's a 4-hour test. You're going to do it in about an hour, hour and a half. It's an hour and 20-minute drive to my office. So if you want,
sure,
I'll just give you the test here. And I was like, fuck yeah. So literally at lunch, he bought me lunch. Literally at lunch, I took the test. I took the multiple choice test. He graded the multiple choice test. I wrote the essay. And when I finished with the essay, what he said to me, I will never forget. He said, as long as your essay is written in English, I'm pretty sure you're going to pass.
Well, he saw your multiple choice.
Because I got one wrong on the multiple choice, which was spelling. I'm a shitty speller.
Right.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then I went and slept on the grass for about 2 hours and flew home. It was great. Back to Burbank. I always think of this when I fly into the Sacramento airport, which is maybe once every year or two. I always think of this. I wonder if they have a little plaque. They should have a little plaque where
the Sacramento airport is beautiful.
Anyway, that was a fun story. That is one I don't think you could write in a script. It just has to happen to you in life. And that's how I graduated high school.
I guess so. Congratulations. Okay, chalkboard to whiteboard. Is our future fading to gray? Let's go.
And another story about me.
The notion that school funding has no bearing on student performance is a pervasive yet deeply flawed talking point. Decades of robust research consistently demonstrates a strong positive correlation. Adequate and equitably distributed funding leads to better student outcomes. You knew this, right?
Yes. Look, I appreciate they've done the research on this. How is this not obvious? Like at some point, you're getting diminished returns on funding. I get that. But how can having literally the words you used as adequate and equitable, both of those seem like the right answer to getting reasonable education?
Sure. I can tell you why. Because there was a study in 1966. It is referred to as the Coleman Report. And it was all about, does additional money improve student outcomes?
Yes.
Decades of research yielded no consensus due to confounding factors masking true effects. However, only now more recently have studies employing improved methodologies to isolate cause and effect have established a stronger consensus. Increased school spending demonstrably improves student outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, if you spend $1 for the whole school, it's probably not going to work. If you spend $100 million for the whole school, it's probably going to work. Somewhere in between is where you need to land.
The numbers aren't as staggering as you would think. Literally, there is a study that talks about, we spend roughly $19,800, something like that, per student in the public schools. If you just increase that by $1,000, you get like a 4% increase in test scores.
Interesting.
A tiny amount of money.
I mean, I'm assuming that's linear maybe for a while, and then it's not. So if you double it, right, 19 times 4, that's an 80% increase. You're probably not going to get that. But my hunch is if you go more than $1,000, you're going to get a pretty big return. That's impressive.
Studies show that per pupil spending is linked to improved test scores, higher education rates, and even increased lifetime earnings for students, especially those from low-income backgrounds. These investments enable smaller class sizes, competitive teacher salaries to attract and retain talent, improve facilities, and crucial support service. I know you don't have any thoughts about paying teachers more.
Yeah, we can just go ahead and stop the talking points right here because I'm going to need about 20 minutes on this one. And let me be clear here, full disclosure. I have done very little, if arguably maybe nothing in my life or career to make this better, but I certainly feel like we should be paying paying teachers as much money as we can. They should be the most desirable profession out there.
Yeah.
It should be the thing that you want to do, not just because it's enjoyable, but also because you're paid really, really, really well. And that really doesn't seem to be the case. The teachers that I know do it because they are passionate about it. They're passionate about teaching kids, and they're paid absolute shit.
Yeah. However, because of how many people are willing to be teachers, the quantity of available talent is large enough that they are willing to, that it drives down the wage. It's a supply demand curve.
Of course. But
Let me say there aren't necessarily that many great teachers. This is the problem. You lose those people. They're off consulting for McKinsey.
Yeah.
You lose those people because they can make a lot more money doing something else.
Well, not every great McKinsey consultant is going to be a great teacher.
Every single one. They have proven this.
It's been shown. But there certainly is some overlap there in the diagram. Everyone. That was in the Coleman 2 report that came out shortly after. That was the other based on Coleman, the TV show. Now, the folks that I know that are teachers, that are either, friends of mine or family, especially public school teachers, it's so bad that like they're buying their own supplies from their own money that they're barely paid.
Are you familiar with Donor's Choice?
No. Donor's Choice?
Yeah. All
that
the schools
would be a great fucking reality TV show right there. That's what we need to have is Donor's Choice.
Donor's Choice. Go to it's a website. You literally can buy things. Teachers write onto their
I know that
Donor's
name.
Choice site.
Yeah.
We need laptop computers. I've bought so many Chromebooks for so many schools because it was such an easy thing. It was like, oh yeah, of course you need computers. Here, that's easy.
I also like that your donation came with restrictions. You're like FOSS software only. No inbox software.
No, they I wish. No. They put down what they want.
Of course.
You just write the check.
Yeah.
In that case, it was like, well, wow, that's a super cheap, really great computer for a kid in school. This will completely work.
But I also love you voting with your checkbook on these. And then when you're like scrolling through and you're like, laptops, sure, yeah, no problem. Chromebooks, yeah, okay, great. And then they're like, we need 12 copies of Photoshop. And you're like, go fuck yourself, Photoshop. You're going to use GIMP and you're going to like it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, there's truth to that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you get such a return on this investment. I know it takes a long time, and that's part of the problem. I have this view of myself where, like, I should not be passing the marshmallow test. I should be the one that's literally like eating all of the marshmallows right now.
Sure.
And somehow, amongst my peers, I'm like the best at the save maybe you. I'm the best at the marshmallow test because other people are just like, well, I want to see results now, and I'm like, but you're not going to. You got to teach these kids.
No, it's an investment. It's an investment for sure.
But how can you not get a significant return from this for everyone?
Yeah. Assertions to the contrary often serve a specific agenda, undermining public education to pave the way for school voucher programs or to erode public trust in democratically governed school boards. Such claims ignore the complex realities of educational improvement, which directly benefit from well-resourced schools. Simply put, money matters in education, and denying this fact is a disservice to students and communities.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this seems relatively obvious to me. I think where you can start to get wrapped around the axles, what's the amount, right? Where should you be relative to what? What does it take to actually fund this? But it does seem like we should be paying first standard deviation to the right of wages. This should be the thing that they want, not their backup job.
Think about the school your kid goes to.
I got 2 kids. One goes to school, one works on the farm.
You and I,
strong hands.
Just so you have a control group.
That
He's
little
your control group.
It's a control group. Oh my God, that's really funny. You're like, one we send to the best school we can. The other one we just get him a book genetics. Every now and again.
Let's see how this comes out.
Man, that kid can dig a fucking hole. You give him a post hole digger. Let me tell you, he'll plant a row of corn faster than you can say schnozsages.
You and I are both part of the problem because we both send our kids to private school.
Well, I didn't send my kid to private school. I sent my kids to an independent school.
I don't really know the difference between those.
Well, as it turns out, I didn't either. And there are classifications on this. So typically private schools they could be for-profit, they could be non-profit. Mm-hmm. They might be run by a single organization. Like, for example, the Catholic Church has deployed a ton of private schools. Those are some of the ones that I went to when I was a kid. Independent schools are, to my knowledge, must be nonprofit and must have a board. They must be assembled, a board of trustees. They must have an assembled board of trustees that manage and direct the school. So you have some element, it's probably the wrong word, but some element of community that is managing and directing the school, not just a dude or a set of dudes in an archdiocese that's picking kids on more of a whim. That's probably a not great explanation, but that's the big gist.
Okay, so you and I are part of the problem. This is what I'm saying.
We are still part of the problem.
You and I are part of the problem because we sent our kids to independent, apparently, school.
You think about anything, any business, certainly any nonprofit that you engage with, and you've got 3 main levers that you can, as an individual, that you can apply, right? You can apply time by putting in sweat to make it better, whether you're serving on the PTA or you're volunteering to serve lunch or whatnot. You can put in treasure, so you can donate money or you can help fund the school through money.
Sure.
And you can put in your talent. So maybe you're great at robotics. You can be a robotics teacher, or you have an interesting view on medical science, and you can apply that in some mechanism them to the school. Those are typically the three levers. You hope that you get at least one or two out of every sort of family, right? You'd really sort of hope to see two. Some folks might not have much time, but they can put in some money, they can put in some talent.
Sure.
That's sort of how high level lens that I look at these things through. And if I think about my relationship with public school now as a quote unquote adult, I still put in the treasure because I'm still paying at least the minimum that I need to pay for
in your taxes.
In my taxes, right? So now what I'm certainly not paying is for these schools, like you still have, at least most of the ones that the public schools I've looked at here in Los Angeles, there's still a suggested amount that you sort of need to pay, which is all the materials and funds. It's very like loosely organized. It's not required. You can go to school without it, but it's kind of like if you can, you should. It's usually a pretty low amount relative to the schooling that you're getting, but there's still some additional treasure. So I'm not paying all of it. I'm paying some part of it. What I'm not doing is putting any time or any talent in. Very little. Like I'll help out. I go to some friends' fundraisers. I'll contribute on that, but like very little compared to the places where I am part of the community, specifically my kids' school. Now my kids are in the same school, and where I try to put in all three. I try to put in time, I try to put in talent, and I try to put in treasure to make it the best school. And really, frankly, I'm at the state now where I'm not even trying to make it the best school. I'm trying to just keep it where it's at. Make sure that it doesn't go backwards.
Sure.
And so the cart doesn't roll backwards.
Here's the problem with the independent school system existing out there, and you and I not being a part of the public school system. If there were no independent school system, we would have our kids in the public school system. And you and I and lots of people like us who are in independent schools would be very strong advocates for better education. And that would make all boats rise. You really do not want to have two different boats that we can all be in, because then those of us who have the wherewithal will make our boat so much better than the other boat. And some of the idiots that are in our better boat are going to say, well, now I don't even want to pay for that other boat. Let that other boat sink. I mean, give me vouchers so that I can take my money out of that boat and put it into my nice boat.
I mean, I feel like that has kind of been the progression, and not just like with independent schools, but you've got these independent schools. Private schools, I feel like maybe are slightly different. Most of them, I think, are, like I said, either for profit or they're ones that have some other basis, like a religious based school. At least the independent ones have grown out of, and certainly the school that we're at was founded by parents that wanted a thing to continue. They wanted to be able to teach kids, and it started from a real grassroots community sort of basis. But I get your point. I just think that if you were to just reset button everything so that all you're left with is the traditional public school, no charters, no independent schools, no private schools, those all just went away tomorrow, you'd end up in the same place, because you'd end up after years of investing in your local public school. You're like, oh, my kids, my child is focused on art. I want to have a special section, a special school for art as their art focus.
We actually have that. Well, we have performing arts schools in Los Angeles.
But those are charter programs, right? Those are typically charter programs. So I'm just saying you'd evolve into something probably very similar, which I don't necessarily think is bad. I don't think on its surface I go, oh, charter schools are broken. That's bad. I think having more organization and more budgeting and cost control at the edge, at the local level, is almost has to be what's best. You want some overarching guidance, but then what your community wants, and that seems like that's what's best. But I understand your point, right? By participating in a smaller school that isn't part of a bigger system, you hurt the bigger system because you're not putting value into that. So I do understand.
Not because of the size of the system, but specifically because it's the system that everybody gets dumped into whose parents aren't paying attention or don't have the money.
I get it.
That's the difference. And so we are harming a whole generation by you and I taking our kids and putting them in the better schools. I'm sorry, the better independent schools.
But you could put charter schools into the same bucket. You can put all
I have different experiences than you do with charter schools.
I have no experience with charter schools, so I can't. So you have to have different ones.
Because I have lots of friends who are parents who have their kids in different. Some kids are at the performing arts private schools. Some kids are in Larchmont. There's this incredible charter system that actually is academically rigorous. It's way better than. It's all part of LAUSD. So you have great charter systems, and you have charter systems that are really kind of terrible.
This is so outside of my expertise. We should be talking about ham radios and frequencies and AI. But it does seem like the charter program is a really positive evolution of the public school system, right? Because it seems like you become more specialized.
It's taking money out of, and it's taking the good students out of, and the parents who would advocate for the public schools generally out of the system and putting them into their specific charter system. So,
well, I get that it's not, but it seems like it's the best approach. Like having one big pot that everyone's in based on geography doesn't seem like the best solution. You want some other way to group folks, I would think. I guess I don't know. What is it that charter schools don't do well?
Depends on the charter school. There are charter schools, like I say, that are just off the charts with their results, their standardized test scores and things like that. And there are charter schools that are just dreadful. It all
Okay.
kind of depends on who's running them. So there's the pro or con argument for charter schools is tough to make because you have both extremes.
But the concept of locally managed, right? Like they're
there are charter schools that do worse than the standard public schools in standardized test scores.
Oh yeah, sure. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. Oh man, I don't know what the solution is for that. Is it like a recycle reuse? Like, okay, you've got, your charter has some expiration time to it, some number of years.
They usually do.
And if you don't do that, then you're like, okay, well,
you could lose your charter provision after 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess how do you see the optimal goal? Like if you were to you have a magic box that you can push a button on and reset everything to some other point, what do you think the best solution is for all of us at large?
Can I backtrack a little bit?
Yes, I think we have to.
Into it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. If you are thinking I'll just buy my kid like you and I did.
Yep.
If you're thinking I'll just buy my kid the very best education money can buy, and he or she will then get a bigger slice of the economic pie than her peers, it doesn't work.
There's a lot more than economic pie. That to me is arguably the smallest part, at least for my wife and I, the way we look at this. We're focused on like round individuals, not just round in shape, because I can do that through my ribs.
Sure.
But and I did this when I was in interviews with for schools, because that's what you have to do now. You have to go interview at schools, and they would ask, what's the most important thing you're looking for in a school? This is for a kindergartner, mind you.
Yeah.
I would say I need help raising my kids in Los Angeles to not be assholes. And I hope that I can partner with somebody, some school to do that. And I really think that's one of them, because like most of these places you're going to get a good education, right? Like most of the schools we're looking, these independent schools you're looking at. But like I need help with them not being assholes. And I feel like that was maybe not, that wasn't the only bar, but it was one of the bars that we really looked at, because a lot of these places turn out assholes. Go to TMZ, look around, and you're like, oh, well, that's not great.
But you're missing what I'm saying here.
Yeah, please.
She's getting a bigger slice of the economic pie than her peers. And why this does not work? Because her peers are not doing as well as she is doing economically.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter to you. I understand that.
No, it does. It does. It's part of it.
It's independent
it wasn't the tier one focus.
Because you aren't worried about feeding your kids, feeding themselves and taking care of themselves and those.
Yeah.
There are much more on the ground worries if you were in the public school and what happens when these kids graduate. The base level worry that you have is nothing like the base level worry that many students actually do have.
I absolutely appreciate that. The base level worry that I had for the kids, beyond just, not being assholes and rounded individuals, was truly environment to learn. Not just curriculum, but environment to learn. I realized that was a big part of what I could afford to provide my kids is an environment to learn, because the public school system has a requirement that everybody must go. And you have kids there that for whatever reason don't want to learn and are disruptive and
don't want to be there. Sure.
And make it a place. And like, I don't need my kids trying to learn while dodging fists.
Yeah.
And if I can provide them a world where that's not the case, that's to me is lovely. Right now, they still got to learn that lesson at some point, but I'd really like them to have to learn that lesson a little later than earlier. I don't feel like there's a lot of benefit in them learning that earlier.
Sure.
To me, that is one of the things. I didn't know that when I was going out on this adventure looking at schools, but that became one of the things I was like, oh man, I can do this, because public schools, they don't have that luxury. It's so much harder to bounce a kid out of public school, whereas in an independent or a private school, it's a privilege really that you're there. And if a school is run well, and that's a big fucking if, especially in this town, and a kid is not, playing by the rules, is not being reasonable, is doing things that are egregious, they should, and they certainly can, just bounce you right out. Now, some schools don't.
And guess where they land?
At another private school.
Or the public schools.
Well, oh yeah.
If they totally lose the independent schools, they end up in the public schools. And the public schools don't have the luxury of being able to get rid of them.
I get it. I totally get it.
So I love that for your kid doesn't have to face those fists and those things, those disruptive, but that leaves a whole bunch of other kids. I want you to worry about the bigger picture, and I want you to understand why it's important to worry about the bigger picture
of
all the kids, not just the places where you can send your kids.
I get it.
Why this is important for the entire world. I want you to imagine for just 1 second that you're on a deserted island with 1,000 people.
Well, it's not very deserted. There's 1,000 people on it.
Everybody's educated.
Yep.
You don't know it, but next to you, there's another deserted island with 1,000 people with very limited education.
Hold on. I need to look up what the word deserted means, because clearly I went to public school. There's 1,000 people. I have 1,000 person island that I'm on.
Walk through this thought experiment with me.
Yeah.
Why it matters that kids that aren't yours get good education.
Yes.
Why this matters, okay?
Yeah.
We should back up and define what education is. Education is, and I think you'll you'll probably agree with this. Education is vicarious learning.
I would hope. Yes, I would hope.
It's a shortcut.
I would call it's a time warp.
Yes.
It's an accelerator.
The other primary type of learning is experiential.
Sure.
Because even without formal education, you still can and will learn. I mean, that's obvious. It's just slower.
Like, like putting my kid on the Serengeti and being like, you're going to figure out how to count. It's a bunch of fucking zebras and lions. Good luck, bud. See you soon.
While you're gaining an education on advanced techniques of brain surgery, the experiential learner is still playing with the leeches.
Yeah, sure.
That's what education really is. It is vicarious learning. And you will learn much faster vicariously than you will experientially.
Of course.
Two sides of the same.
You're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah. Two sides of the same coin. Education tends to breed diversity among students.
Yeah.
And education tends to breed specialization in individual students.
Okay.
We all want to learn more about things that we're naturally good at. If you have a knack for physics, you'll enjoy learning about physics. If you have a knack for agriculture, you'll likely enjoy learning about agriculture.
School has to pull those out of you too, right? School's a place for you to experience those.
Yes. The school finds what your niche is, what your specialization is. If you like engineering or architecture or design or healthcare or dental care, all those things can be found in the educational process.
Sure. I have some questions about the person who likes dental care, but we'll come back to that later.
So go back to our islands. Now go 100 years later. You can probably tease out the results of this thought experiment now.
Yeah.
An island full of educated people who are continuing to educate themselves.
Yeah.
On which island are the people living better?
The educated people.
Naturally, some people will like building boats. Others will be better at fishing. The ones who are educated will have to do less experimentation. They'll move forward faster.
Yeah.
In the same way as, obviously one island 100 years later will be living much better than the other one.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. You're saying you're doing points in time.
Yes.
Well, yeah, until you get to the point where, you collapse upon yourself because you're also pissed off about whatever thing is you're pissed off about. Like the inflection point that we might be at now.
Right. Once you figure out nuclear weapons, I can't help you much.
Yeah, even before that. But yeah, I appreciate your...
But you want all the residents of your island to be as educated as you can possibly get them because it makes all of your lives better.
Yes, you would hope.
The more everyone knows, the more people are contributing. I'm going to say economic, it's just shorthand. The more people are contributing to our little economy, and education gets you contributing more faster, the better off we all are. So you can't just worry about your kid in the private school. You have to care about the kids in the public school.
Yes.
Because it makes a difference as to how your kid will live, your independent school kid, how that kid will live in the future.
Agreed.
So we should all want the most educated populace possible. That's what the question becomes. How do we most effectively, what's the simplest way to get a more educated populace?
That is a great question. I'm glad you distilled it down to that. I think it comes back to a similar point I made earlier. You make the things that require education to be the desirable things.
I got a much simpler answer than that.
Oh. Well, I was going to make mine more complex, but let's go with a simpler one.
Study after study, while there's frequently inefficiencies, but study after study shows the more money you pour into education, the more educated the world gets, the more kids graduate high school, the more kids graduate college, and it is literally a function of targeted dollars. The 1966 Coleman Report was exactly wrong.
Because they're saying there's no correlation. Or no relation.
Exactly. And as it turns out, there is a precise correlation. All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
We should really run a clock or something when we're doing this.
I've got a giant one right here.
I have. It's kind of fitting because we're sitting here talking about school and especially school for the masses, right? We classically call public schools. And the best thing that I've seen this week, the thing that still has my cheeks hurting from smiling is what my kids' school does, and a lot of schools do something similar to this, is they do effectively team programs for the end of school for the little guys, the smaller kids. It's so much fun to watch these kids. They're competing. They split the kids up all grade levels. They get thrown into a couple different buckets of teams and they compete. And it's really about that sportsmanship and them working together as a team to achieve a common goal. Not about winning. They try not to focus on winning. You still have winners. It's not just all participation trophies, but not just about you must win at any cost. That's like how we get there. And I think that's such an important character trait. Certainly one that wasn't as directly exposed to me in my education career at those times. So much fun to watch. And I volunteer to take pictures, not necessarily ones that are in focus, but pictures nonetheless.
You take what you can.
It's a ton of fun. And just watching these kids, especially my little guy, who it's his first year being able to do it, all of his little friends, they were just so excited to be a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like winning wasn't the thing. They were just excited to play with their friends and compete. And I'm like, this shit gets lost. And it gets lost not because of the kids, because of the fucking parents. Yeah. it's the parents are like, oh, you won. And I'm like, why do you lead with that? If you make that the thing, of course, it's the fucking thing they're going to focus on.
Sure. My kids' school had a similar thing. They called it the Olympics, and it was great fun.
Sure.
5/6 of the school ended up at the end of the Olympics in tears, which was always great fun.
But that 1/6, they were the ones that did the blood transfusion and the dopings, right? That was all the Russian kids that they had over there.
Yeah.
I just handed out little steroids at the start for my kids.
Nice.
For anybody who has little kids, you probably already know this, but A, they're going to grow up. B, while they're little, spend as much time with them as you can because it's so much fun and just the smiles and the laughter.
And it's such a small window.
Such a small window. Like already my kids now is getting so big and already doing shit where I'm like, oh man, I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
These little games we play are almost over.
Absolutely.
It was the absolute best. It's my favorite way to start the summer and I loved it. How about you?
Tina Fey's The Four Seasons, Season 1, based on Alan Alda's 1981 movie of the same name. 3 suburban couples vacation together each season, but tensions arise when one couple splits up and the husband brings a much younger woman into the group. Will Forte plays the Alan Alda role, Tina Fey the Carol Burnett role. The entire endeavor has been updated for modern times. For example, Jack Weston and Rita Moreno's parts are now played by a charming gay couple.
Awesome.
Sharp wit, heartfelt emotion, and brilliant storytelling, and such a great premise. The Four Seasons, Season 1.
Say that 5 times fast.
On Netflix now.
4 Seasons, Seasons 1. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled seasons. I'm going to check that out. I've heard so many good things about this show, and I absolutely adore Tina Fey.
She's just great.
There are so few people that I want to continuously keep making things.
Yeah.
And it's Sorkin and Fey. Like I want them to just keep making things for me to consume.
That is the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense, a truly terrible podcast from The Awful Company. This is on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm Stu Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, AntennaPod, iHeartRadio, Spotify, my favorite, Overcast, or wherever you may get your podcasts from.
Nonsense uses the Internet Archive, a nonprofit digital library offering free universal access to digitized collections of books, movies, software, music websites, and more. Through initiatives like the Wayback Machine, users can explore snapshots of over 866 billion web pages, providing invaluable insight into the evolution of the Internet and human knowledge. The Internet Archive, if you haven't already, check it out.
The Internet Archive is like the best thing on the internet. There really is nothing better. If you haven't explored it, you should. If you don't support it, I really think you should.
Absolutely. Have you read the entire 866 billion web pages?
No, I'm only about halfway through. Yeah, I'm in the early parts of pets.com.
Great twist coming up for you shortly.
It's great. We'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday mornings for more nonsense. Please join us.
Fantastic. I got a baseball game to go to. Have a great night.
They still play that sport?
Well, for now.
That's the one with a bat, right? Mm-hmm. That is measured in hours.
Not a fan, are you?
Every part of that game. You have changed me. I now love going to baseball because I go there and I'm just like...
So fun.
I feel like I set life to 0.6x. I feel like I just took everything and just slowed it down. And look, I'm pro pitch clock. I think the pitch clock is great because at least there's something to look at. Like, I think they should wind the pitch clock down another 5 seconds and add 3 more innings on the end. That's what they should do. Just a little more action.
I literally have to go to a baseball game. I got to get out of here.
And another thing about the baseball, they use a lot of balls. I don't understand. Where do all the old balls go?
Bye.
You know, Babe Ruth had 6 thumbs.